All right. All right. Welcome to the Iroquois Board of Education meeting for May. I call this meeting to order at 6 p.m. And we can I have a motion to move into executive session to discuss the employment history of a particular person or persons?
Moved. Second.
Discussion? All in favor? That's all of us. That motion carries, and we're going into executive session. We will be back no later than 6:30 because we have our budget hearing at 6:30.
And we just.
Hello, everyone. We are going to turn our meeting. We've returned from our executive session, and we are now on item number 3, our budget hearing. We're going to hear from our business administrator, John Wolski, who is going to present and discuss our annual budget and show us what we're looking at for next week.
Thank you very much. Today's presentation is very similar, almost identical to the prior 2 presentations. We haven't made many changes to the expense side. We had some different changing news with the state aid and things like that, but basically this is going to be the same presentation. This one's different in that the other presentations were kind of part of our budget process. This one is required by New York State that we have to have a budget hearing between 7 and 14 days before the budget vote, which is a week from today. That's why we're doing this meeting today, which is 7 days before, and we satisfy that requirement of a budget hearing. So, reminder of our vision, our mission, the different considerations we have in the budget process. No changes here. Future oriented, of course, we always talk about planning, looking forward, especially now what we know that state aid situation is so volatile right now, and there's going to be studies done on how foundation aid is done. We don't really know how it's going to impact us one way or another, but we got to be aware of that and try and get as much information as we can while they're in that process. We'll look at the budget philosophy, tax levy estimate, no changes, of course, on the revenues, expenses, and we'll review the propositions for vote. Philosophy, protect our programs against state aid and tax levy fluctuations. That's our long-term goal, is to not just look at next year, but look at the next 5 years down the road and kind of plan ahead and be ready for that, so we don't have to impact programs and make reductions. Concerns our state aid and tax cap do not support higher costs driven by CPI. Of course, in the last year and a half, CPI has been well over 5%. That hits every aspect of our budget in different ways, from everything we buy, supplies for different classrooms. And somehow we have to make that still work when our revenues are kind of capped and restricted by 2 or 3% a year. And of course, there's occasional state mandates that come along. We know about the electric buses and things like that can impact our long-term planning as well. And we again are mindful of the New York State philosophy on distribution of state aid, and so we'll keep our eyes on that as well. Tax cap calculation is a very straightforward calculation. We put our numbers that they ask of us in a calculator, and it puts out our allowable tax levy increase. This year, our tax-based growth factor was a little higher than usual years. Usually it's 1.005 or 0.6, about 0.5%. This year it's almost 1%. So that, coupled with the allowable growth factor of 2%, means that we're a little above 3%. You can see our past history. When CPI was low, our tax levy increase was occasionally even under 2% as an allowable calculation that we do. So like I said, with the growth factor being 1% and our CPI measure being 2%, it's capped at 2%. We can't do anything above, even though CPI is really 4.5 or 5. The cap means we can only figure 2% into that calculation. So we come up with 3.25, which is the allowable increase with a simple 50% majority vote. The tax impact, we can just kind of estimate. We do kind of, if everything stayed equal and nothing changed, it would be a 3.25% increase on the tax rate. In reality, we have 6 different towns with 6 different assessments and 6 different equalization rates. So every year, they do adjust differently in those 6 different towns. When we look at the total...
If we
Go
could
ahead.
back up 1 second to that one, because I do want to recognize Karen here. She's from Senator Gallivan's office, so thank you for coming in and representing his office. We greatly appreciate that. Because this is one thing I have talked to the state about is equalization rates and how we can't give actual numbers without the equalization rates, which come out end of July. The state could change its process with this, where if they use the ones from last year, then we would always be able to give taxpayers actual numbers. Really, Senator Galvin doesn't have much to do with that because it's the assessor's office, but I figure if Karen's here, we could always put a plug in. And not that I haven't told him this before, and he tries and he does his work, because it would be nice to give the taxpayers, but I just want everyone to realize it's not John holding back. It's, that comes out at the end of July, and that's why in August we can approve the rates and know what they are, and until that happens, we're really taking guesses. Thank you, John.
Okay. And if we look at the total school district as a whole, and we equalize everything and we put everything together, what we see is that average equalized tax rate has been going down, and the simple fact of that is that property values have gone up so quickly, and our budget, our levy increases have been kind of stable around 2%. So now there's just a lot more value to spread that tax levy across, and it shows that the equalized tax rate is actually going down for the last 3 or 4 years. Mm-hmm. Again, we always say this doesn't mean your tax bill is going to go down. It means the equalized rate of all the 6 towns shows that. We don't know, again, what those equalization rates are going to be for next year at this time. Foundation aid, there was some suspense while we're waiting for the budget process to unfold in Albany, but at the end of the day, our foundation aid remained where it is this year. It's not going to increase next year. We were hoping for a 2 or 3% increase, something positive, but flat is still better than what the executive budget was in January. So that is going to help us make that work next year.
And we should thank you to the senator too, because I know he played a role in not following what the governor said, but getting us back to hold harmless, so thank you for that.
Yes, very important. And universal pre-K, we do have additional funding allocated to the district, so we are going to use that and the space that we now have at the primary buildings to really utilize and have 5 UPK classes for next year in the primary buildings. The 2020 capital project, I spoke this a few times, will have an impact on the 24-25 budget, but really a neutral impact. We do have debt service payments that are going to start to occur next year, but we do have matching state aid for those payments. So you're going to see the expenses go up a little bit, but there's going to be matching aid to go with that. So net impact, as we said when that project was out to vote, we said it would have no local tax impact, and it doesn't, because those state aid payments match our debt service payments. So that's a summary of the revenue side. Again, we're seeing a slight decrease in the state aid when you look at all the different state aid items, because there's so many expense-based aid items are kind of going a little down, because if we spend less this year, we're going to get less back next year. But overall, our revenue, we're showing 3.44% growth. The budget we're presenting retains all the items on this list and pretty much everything that's intact right now this year. We have our responsive intervention, academic lab, athletics, student clubs, music, art, library, SROs, counselors and support staff, and a teacher on special assignment supporting the reading program. We typically look at these high-end expense items, which are the teacher retirement system expenses that the district incurs. While the teacher retirement system is pretty low, we're at 2.5, the employee retirement system is a little higher increase going into next year at 18%. And we've been able to kind of stabilize our health insurance using our self-funded program, and we've kept that pretty low over the past years. And again, we're projecting about 3.5% increase on health insurance expenses, which compared to the marketplace out there is pretty good.
Yeah, I want to say John doesn't do himself credit there, or even the employees here, because being on self-funded has to do with use and taking care of themselves. Mm-hmm. I want to say 4 years ago it was about 6% increases.
Oh, yeah.
And it's substantially decreased each year. just because of how it's been implemented. I know Dave has helped with that. He sends out monthly reminders, and people are taking advantage of things to help out, so it's been decreasing the cost or the increases, and hopefully we'll just keep following this trend of decreased increases, yes.
Absolutely. The budget we have includes a $100,000 capital outlay project. There was a proposal, I think the Senate and Assembly had proposals to increase this to $250,000 as an allowable capital outlay project, but those did not happen. So we are still proposing a $100,000 capital outlay project. And we will address the STEM room at the high school and then repoint brick as much as we can do with that amount of money. And those will be completed in the summer of 2025.
So the repointing of the bricks would be at the high school. Would it be all of them? No. So what we always built, what we always build into the project is, let's say the STEM room, we're anticipating that of the 100,000 to take up 60 of it. That would leave us roughly, we'll say 40,000 to go around and do bricks. If the STEM room takes 70, then we do $30,000 of work. If it's 50,000, then we do 50,000. That way we don't leave any money on the table, and we're always taking care of the district better off.
So we look at the expense side. Again, we total up to 3.44 increase on the expense side. You see the debt service line does have a big increase, as I discussed. That's our payment for most of that. It's not all that. It's our payment for the new capital project, but we have a matching state aid payment to go with that. So at this point, everything matches our revenues and expenses. On May 21st, a week from today, we have Proposition 1, which is our general fund budget. Proposition 2 is our normal replacement of vehicles, 3 full-size buses, 1 30-passenger cutaway bus, and 1 wheelchair lift-equipped cutaway bus, not to exceed $722,685.
And John, did we decide on if it's an electric bus, the small bus that we're getting, or?
So we have the 2 on there. The 3 full-size are going to be diesel buses. We have applied for grants for the 2 smaller ones, the 30-passenger cutaway and the wheelchair-equipped lift bus. If we receive those grants and we can buy those buses for less than that price and have them electric, we will do that. If it's not lower than the gasoline price, then we'll buy gasoline. We will include that, and if the total cost is below those, we will go with it and try the electric.
Yep. Yeah, and the thing is really is for a pilot program. It's not to start converting over. It's driving through Alma, how do they work? Driving out to Wales, how do they work? Driving through Marilla. If we have to do a longer run, will it work in the winter? Will it work uphill, downhill, and so on?
And these 2 smaller buses don't require any additional work at the transportation garage. We can put the chargers in there without any substantial infrastructure change, so it's a good one to try out. What do you mean?
The buses that are taken out of service, what we do is, we actually have them as a trade-in program, and that's one of the things I was asked actually to change a couple years ago in the budget newsletter is when we go out, legally we put the $722,000 in there to get approval from the taxpayers. It's never that much because when we trade in the buses, that brings that dollar amount that we borrowed to take them when we trade them in, just like when you buy a car. But legally, we have to put that amount in.
And so is there around there less on any trades that we get for that?
Are you anticipating there being less trade-in value with the push for electric buses, that they're not?
We've seen the values going up on our buses.
Oh, okay.
So that's another interesting thing about New York State. The rules and regulations we have here for our bus vehicles, it's much more stringent than other states. And so typically they take them, trade them in, and then they take them to another state, and then they go into service in bus fleets in other states.
Don't laugh, it's the truth. And then there's one board seat open, and we...
John, I just got a quick question. With that statement, Doug, is there still remaining useful life in the bus then?
Not in New York State, because what they, well, yeah, when they age out, we look at how many years, and what they do is they do a maintenance on it. So in the cost of maintenance, we have so many turning over. That's why we try to keep them 10 to 12 years.
Okay.
And that's where the maintenance on them, because like you can't have any rust on them. And we used to be able to patch the holes, but now you got to replace the whole panel. So when they start to get to that point where there's a little bit of rust, but it's not so bad, and you're replacing panels, that's about the time to get rid of them, or the mechanical parts, you're replacing them, but it's costing more, and that's when we ship them to other states. Actually, when I under recognitions, I'm going to talk about our transportation department, how they had 100% of passing, because the DOT comes into New York State twice a year to check the buses. Other states are a little more relaxed on what it means to pass for inspection.
Okay, so cost of ownership exceeds that, so trading or turning them over is more practical financially.
Yeah, and they keep them as long as they can, as long as they're safe and they're cost effective. And the bus garage over there, the head mechanic, does a great job with tracking things. I know it was a few years ago, but we had one company we bought buses from, and they're maybe 6 years old, and they were costing more in maintenance than buses that were 8 years old, 10 years old. So we were getting rid of those for that reason. They were just very costly. They didn't work well.
And most show that when a bus gets to be 10, 12, 13 years old, that's when it really starts to turn. And doing 3 or 4 a year as we've been, that kind of turns everything over about 10 years.
Yep, thank you.
And then one other question, John.
Yes.
I saw on the New York State Education website that we were awarded a grant
Yes.
for $360,000. So are we planning?
That was that the UPK?
Yeah, UPK one.
Yes, that's the UPK expansion grant.
Yeah, are we planning to use that coming up? Or-
Definitely, yes, for
Okay.
next year. With the new class, it's for expansion of additional classes.
Yeah.
Because we're adding 2 classes next year, that's what that's going to be used for.
Okay.
Yes.
And it's coming at a great time. I'm glad, Mary Jo, you filled that out. So great question, because it's $360,000, and by the time you take in staff, but more importantly, by having it now in all 3 buildings, they need, more tables, more chairs, more of everything to outfit those rooms, and this should take care of pretty much all of that. So that's very helpful in the expansion.
There was quite the difference in the amount of schools than what they got. Like some of them in the, like Garden City Union Preschool in Out District, I don't know how big that is, but they got $2.3 million. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, City of Buffalo obviously got more because there's more,
Yeah.
but some of these other numbers were quite large.
Yeah, and how that got priced out, because we might not actually hit the total use of the 360, it's you got $10,000 for each student as your expansion is. So what's good this year is everyone that put in for and wants UPK, we're able to give it to them. Whereas last year, 20 or 30 students did not get it. And so this expansion is helping us get to that point.
Hey Doug, on the grant, that's a 1-year grant?
It's a 1-year grant.
Have they been offering grants on an annual basis for the pre-K?
I guess can't answer that as simple as it is. So what, again, the senator and stuff has put in is more money each year, and that's with the regular budget. If you look at our state aid runs, and that's $5,400 per student, and that's been going up each year. This is just for expansion, so if you had 3 classes going to 5, you get money for the 2 extra classes. So we do 18 in a class, 18 and 18 is 36, $10,000. That's how we got to 360. So we'll expend all that. Then the other grant that's in there for the $5,400, we'll be using that years after to fund the salaries from that point forward. Because there's more than enough in there to take care of, I shouldn't say all the salaries, but we'll get all the $5,400 for each of the classes. Did I get that right, John?
Yes, very good.
And just because we have 12 minutes and John's on his one of his last slides, another question, just to fill it in. We said we'd ask
Good,
questions.
because I was trying to figure out how to fill in a little some time here, so thank you.
So for grants, how do we know as a district grants that are become available and that we're applying for them. I know some grants are based upon demographic and things like that, but
So we typically get a notification from New York State and other organizations when grants are available. The tricky part is that oftentimes, because of our community socioeconomic and the makeup of it, we're typically not eligible. For example, that the grants that we got earlier this year, we still try if we think that we have a shot, and sometimes we get them and sometimes we don't.
Yeah, I want to say this week, there were 2 or 3 alerts I had of new grants that are opening up that we looked at, and I passed them along to John. I think John probably gets frustrated because I think he gets them too, but it makes me feel better. And I'll CC Mary Jo on them, or Dave on them, or Chris Hershey's in here somewhere, special ed, whatever area they're in, transportation.
yeah, I
as
think
much
it'd
as
be
we
good
can.
just for people to be, like, when we do apply for grants, just, you know, to let us know the outcome. And I know we always do, but when we apply for them and we don't get them, you know, maybe we don't bring them up as much, but it's good for awareness.
And
Or,
sometimes,
yeah, even if it's, we look at them and well, here's a grant and we looked at it, but we don't qualify for it. That's our biggest thing when we look at it. You look at the parameters and you have to have a certain free and reduced lunch count. Well, we know where our free and reduced lunch count is and they want this number. We don't even put in for them, we don't meet their criteria.
right, and sometimes there's a step that says you have to co-partner with organizations that we just don't have partnerships with.
John,
And we do work, one more thing, we do work with BOCES. So like the Sandy Hook Promise, that was the BGA grant that they got. They're reapplying for, what's that? CSTAG as well. Those were grants that came through there. So we are part of the COSR at BOCES for their grant specialists to look for grants and write them, and we'll get an email every so often from them.
And those are new grants that are awarded competitively, but we also have a core of grants that we get every year from New York State that we have to apply, but it's really an award. 611, 619, Title I, Title II, Title IV, UPK, those are really awards, but we still have to do grant paperwork. They're called grants, and we still have to do applications for them. But it's not a competitive process, it's an award. But then there's other ones that are new that you're competing against other people in New York State for sometimes too.
on the, just on the budget, but on
All right. Wow. Sorry, I went to physical therapy. Apparently it's working. Welcome to all who have come to observe the meeting of the Iroquois Board of Education. There are 2 periods of recognition of guests listed on the meeting agenda. The first is for comments regarding agenda items, and the second is for topics not on the agenda. Speakers may offer comments related to school operations and programs, but the board cannot hear personnel comments concerning any individual associated with the school system. Please address these concerns to the appropriate administrator. If you wish to be recognized, please fill out the appropriate form and turn it in to our district clerks. Some people have already done that. If you have one, bring that up real quick and give it to our district clerk, please. I lost my spot. As per policy 1514, public participation at board meetings, public comment by district residents is limited to 15 minutes total unless the board suspends this limit. Each person is given up to 3 minutes in which to address the board. Additionally, no more than 3 people may speak on a single topic unless the board also waives this limitation. This is a meeting held in public rather than a public meeting, which means we will not engage in dialogue with members of the community this evening. District personnel will follow up with you regarding your concerns. Rest assured, we are listening carefully and take seriously what you have to say. Please demonstrate respect by speaking to the issues, sharing ideas and opinions, but not engaging in personal attacks. The board appreciates your willingness to share your concerns and celebrations this evening. Please be advised that this meeting is being live streamed and the recording is posted on the Iroquois website.
Remember, they can stay or go.
Yeah, okay. If you were here just to have your to watch your child do the student report and you don't want to stay for the whole meeting, we won't make you. The door's not locked. You can leave if you want to, but we'd love if you stayed. Okay, that brings us to discussion, board discussion and news worth sharing. The first thing is our ambassador report. Does anyone have any reports from their school?
I do. Well, it's this Friday is the art show at Wales and the STEAM and ice cream social. Last year, I think, Jim, you went to it. And Moog robotics team is going to be there. The Beaver Meadow, I guess it's probably Buffalo Audubon Society. They do a bird catch and release, so.
They use the whole campus.
Yeah, it's great.
Grounds, playgrounds, school. It's really very cool.
Yeah, very cool. They had somebody from UB. They did, they had microscopes there, so they put a plug in. I'll report on it the next board meeting, so.
On April 22nd, I attended the intermediate building PTO meeting where new officers were elected. It was very well attended. People are excited about opening that new building. May 2nd, I attended the Wellness Committee meeting, which was the last meeting of the year. And on Wednesday, May 8th, I attended the Alma PTO meeting where they're busy preparing for field day, 3rd and 4th grade picnic. And I am volunteering at the 4th grade picnic at Alma Meadows on Friday, May 31st. So,
Any other reports? Yep. I think everybody went, right, and voted in the district-wide art show? So, yeah, incredible. I know I couldn't draw that well at that age. I can't draw that well now, so, anyway. Anybody else? Okay. That brings us to ECASB updates. Does anybody have any workshops or meetings that they attended in the last month?
oh, but you attended for Keith and I at the delegate assembly meeting last Thursday. How did that
I
go?
knew you were going to say that.
Thank you for covering.
It was not as long. We didn't take the full 2 hours. And a lot of the discussion was really about tax caps, elections and budgets, and the interesting issue that is coming up with capital projects. The cost of a capital project, it seems to be increasing faster than or more than the amount that flexible amount, I forget what it's called, the flexible amount that you build into a capital project. The assumption, I think, is because of the Bills Stadium being built, it's making projects bid out higher, and so districts aren't able to continue moving forward with some of their capital projects. They have to rebid them or go out for another vote for their public to get more money for the project. So I think those were the big issues that everybody was kind of addressing.
The only other thing at the legislative committee, and I know Jane can speak a little bit about the breakfast later, is that, you hear, John and us talk a lot about, state aid and foundation aid, and, the governor has appointed a commissioner of the Rockefeller Group to look at that state aid, but, all of us and the public really needs to pay attention because the people writing the new rules may not end up working very well for us in Iroquois. So it could end up costing, a lot of money. So it's just something we really need to pay attention to what's going on in Albany because it affects us at a very real level, here at home and in our pocketbooks.
The other thing that concerns me about this situation is that there's nothing indicating that the people sitting at the table are educators. They are not administrators. They are not school board members. They're just, for lack of nicer way to say it, they're number crunchers, and they're gonna crunch numbers. And I would like to see somebody at the table representing school boards, representing administrators, and representing our teachers and our educators, because when it comes right down to it, the foundation aid is directly impacting education.
And they were people that, not speaking that they were picked by the governor to be there.
Yeah. So I'd like to see people at the table, the right people at the table, helping them come up with the solution.
I've got a question for Doug, and it might seem rhetorical, but it really isn't. Has the state reached out to the Superintendent's Association at all as far as reworking the formulas?
No, we have the same concerns when I go to the meetings, that the state, the governor's appointing people and not taking input from the field. We all believe the formula should be redone, and there's certain aspects that we are very concerned with, because you hear the governor saying enrollment has changed, and so what are you doing? Why is our formula the same if we're using these same numbers of students that are no longer here? But what she's leaving out is the other half of what's inflation done. I don't think anyone has seen their state taxes go down, and so she's looking at schools and saying one thing. I'll pick on reserves, where we have reserves for like capital projects or different things to balance it out, and we're held to like a 4% there. She's touting how the state is doing great because they keep growing theirs, and they're up to 14%, I heard last Saturday, but yet schools are not in the same boat, and she's saying we have too much money. Not trying to speak for or against her, just saying there's a lot of disparities. And so by not having superintendents or business officials or people in the business talking about how the business is run and how it's different than agriculture or industrial or car manufacturing, it's hard to think of a good formula coming out at all with it. And that's been the problem before foundation aid, where there was a lawsuit. The state lost the lawsuit, then they came up with the formula. Then the governor said, well, we're going to modify how it's funded and change how it's funded. Haven't followed through. The governor said, like last year, well, I did so great, I fully funded it. And now she said, well, I should maybe be making cuts to it, and I should change pieces of it I don't like. So how can you be so good that you did this at this part, and now you're changing exactly what you're touting you did great for? Thank you for what you did back then of trying to get that to the right spot. But it's very frustrating to us as superintendents that there's no one from education that at least I know of yet that's on that panel.
Well, I'm thinking she probably has come to the realization how broke the state really is, which is going to make things extremely difficult next year. But has the state or SED given any indication or any reasoning why they're taking this out of house? And, a firm that is totally unfamiliar with the funding struggles that New York State schools have been plagued with for way, way too many years.
The only thing I've heard is everyone says, I haven't heard anything out of the governor's office. Maybe she's telling someone else, but she's not telling us. I look out in the audience to see if I'm right, and I kind of see a head moving, so I think I'm in the right direction with that too for another group, which is very frustrating when it's not transparent at all.
Well, one of the things that really has me worried, and I did attend the legislative breakfast on Saturday, and Senator Gallivan was there, and it's the second time that I have heard within a 6-month period about GEA, the Gap Elimination Adjustment. And that absolutely killed our school systems a number of years ago. And it wasn't until our parents and our teachers and our school boards all got together, and it was back at the same time with the state testing. And that was the only time that we were able to affect change. And while they did not repeal the GEA, they did not fund it. And I don't mean to be on a soapbox, but this is my second last meeting, and you folks need to hear it. What they're going to do a year from now is advertise how much more additional money is going to go into education. And you're going to hear all of these flowery things. And then the budget's going to pass, and then you're going to see GEA raise its ugly head. Because it wasn't repealed, it just was not funded. And our legislators are going to be forced to fund that again. So what that means is all of the aid that we were promised early on in the process, and we went through the budget vote, they will systematically take portions of that aid away throughout the year. Over the course of the years that GEA was actually funded in the past, Iroquois Central Schools lost over $27 million in aid. You spread that over a 7-year period, and how much more additional money is that for our school district? So please, it's not the school board up here that's setting these tax rates. It's your legislators. Those are the folks you need to contact. Those are the folks that you need to convince that our kids' education is far more important than any special program that they might see. Without our kids, without their education, we have nothing. And they only have a few things to do in the New York State Constitution. And one of those is to fully fund our education for our kids, our public school education. Doesn't mean that we have to supply education for charter schools, money for charter schools. It doesn't mean that we have to pay college tuition for kids. But all of those monies are all grouped into one thing that they call the education budget. And when you start peeling the onion away, what ends up back here at Iroquois is a very small sliver of what you've all worked so hard for and your kids deserve. So I implore you, start contacting your legislators now, because that is the only thing that's going to make a difference.
And one last thing on that, just to point something out, is when in our district, if, John and Doug and everyone does a good job managing the budget, and there's money left over, some of that goes into reserves, but we're limited at 4%. We've asked, and other districts have asked the state to raise that. The state has not allowed that to happen, but they did see fit to want to raise their own reserves, money they're allowed to hold for their budget. What we would use that money for is if there's a shortfall in the budget, or for capital gains, for capital improvements on our building. And it's just kind of funny that they tell us we can't increase it while they go ahead and increase their own. And it's all your money that they're holding.
The piece I want to add is Chuck mentions contact your legislators, but I think even more important is the governor. Until, the School Boards Association, Superintendents Association, Teachers Associations all got together, and it took about 3 years. It's a very common thing about funding, and where the whole state budget starts is with the governor. And in our state, the governor wields more power in the budget than any other group. And she sets that number out first, and what's important to her is hearing from it. And when to hear from it, it's not now. It's not, they passed their budget in April. She puts her budget out in January. So it's now, it's in the fall is when we have, should do it earlier.
3 weeks into April, even though she puts it out in January.
Yeah.
She put it off and put it off and put it off.
And so once it makes it hard on legislators, because if she comes out and says, Iroquois is getting this dollar amount and another district's getting this dollar amount, and once every district knows what's in the budget, it's very hard for legislators, especially if they have multiple school districts, to say, well, I'll take a little money from this district to give it to this one. And that starts with the governor right in the beginning of putting more money for all the school districts and equitably distributing it. And not, she'll come out and say, all governors, so it's really not her, but a lot of governors will say, here's this huge percentage I've done for education. When you break it down, what goes into public schools, K through 12, for general education, it's almost nothing. All that's earmarked and put in special things and grants and other things that are focused into certain areas. You got to start with the governor. Period. That's my opinion. And I hear that resounded throughout the state for people who work with it. And it's sorry, I'll stop.
So I was part of the legislative breakfast for ECASB on Saturday. And another thing that was made pretty clear is that we can't just go to our own representatives, like our representatives here in Western New York. The Western New York delegate really needs help addressing the issues in Western New York. We have to start writing our letters, not just to Western New York legislators, but to the legislators who are chairing the education committees in Albany. So that would be Senator Shelley Mayer and Assemblyman Michael Benedetto. So just because you're not a voter in their district doesn't mean that they won't listen to you, because their job is to run the education committees. So they need to know what everybody across the state wants and needs. And so when you're writing those letters, copy them out so that they are seeing what you are sending to your legislators, so that when our legislators go back to Albany and say, this is what we need, they have the letters behind them with those people CC'd on them. So just another.
So for the general public, Jane, if they wanted to find out all these people that we're supposed to mail letters to, where would they go?
You could go, Karen's got cards.
Excellent.
Office phone number.
It's,
Not my phone number, it says, but the office is there, the address is there, and the phone number.
there is, the State Assembly and the State Senate both have a web page. You start there, and you can click on who's my legislator, but it'll show you who the legislators are for all the districts, and it's actually pretty user-friendly.
Maybe a Monday message worthy?
Yeah, John, give me some type with a link to them if you would, because I also know in your budget, there's contact information.
Our budget presentations, the first 2 or 3 have, at the end of that presentation, that's open, that's on our website, has all the contact information and phone numbers attached near the end of those presentations.
Okay. Anything else from ECSB? Okay, I've lost my spot. So we're now looking at the discussion for the resolution regarding zero-emission buses. It's in our packet so that everybody could read it and see if it is something that you wanted to support. It is being adopted by our neighboring school districts. If we signed on, we'd be another district that is sending that clear message to Albany that we need to see some changes in the zero bus mandates.
And the resolution it's really clear. It's not saying that we are against the future or looking forward. What it's saying is that we are asking New York State for more time in implementing this, more studies to be done, and if they are going to implement this, that they have to be partners in sharing the cost. To give everyone an idea, an estimate for Iroquois to go fully electric is going to cost the taxpayers $15 million. To do this. That's just an estimate with no additional funding
Just in our district.
from New York State. That's our district. It was billions in the state. And when this is just taking form, and why it's so important to what Chuck said and what Jane said. Last time I was in Albany, and Jane asked a simple question: what happens if our voters vote no on this? And they said, well, then we'll exempt it from the budget, and they'll just have to pay for it. Period. So that's the mindset, and that's why it's important that we're trying to get Albany to pay attention to what we're doing. And $15 million for Iroquois is massive.
Yeah. So the discussion is to see if, as a board, we want to support this, if we would want to sign it, if we would want to put it on our agenda tonight, we would add it to our agenda to vote on this resolution, and if we did that and voted positively, we would sign it tonight and send it. If you want more time to look at it, we could also vote on it in our June meeting. What are you guys thinking?
I'm good with it. I think it's something that somebody needs to wake them up in Albany.
Okay.
I mean, we're dealing with the real world struggles, not the ideology.
Yeah, I think the key is the ask within the document really asks for increased flexibility in the implementation timeline of the zero emission bus mandate and substantial financial support to cover the difference in the cost between electric and gas buses. This support should extend to necessary upgrades in electrical infrastructure to accommodate the charging of these buses, which means everything that Jim had said, but that's the actual language in the document. And for me, we need more time. I think just having this initiative is important, but at the right timing. So I'm for that because it makes sense, and we're asking for something that's very practical.
All right, well then, when we get to the consensus agenda, I'm going to need somebody to make a motion to add this to our agenda. Okay. District Planning Conference update. Heather, and Chuck. Where are we?
So did you get a chance to review
They did, yep.
the summary points? So we met 2 times to, is there an echo?
Is it mine, Mike?
Yeah, it is yours. Got it. So we have an email that summarizes this, a couple pages long, but I'll just give everyone the Reader's Digest version. We want each building, including our new building, to go through their success stories and their challenges, and reflecting on the past year. We're at the end of last year, what they said that they were going to do versus what was actually done. We'd like the presentations ahead of time so that we can have more discussion about what the board can do to help them with their building goals, and as opposed to reading through PowerPoints and using that valuable time together. We'd like to focus a lot more on data so we can make more informed decisions. Nora was gracious enough to send us the conference agendas for the last 5 years. And before COVID, we went through students with disability trends, social and emotional trends, enrollment trends, Panorama, Ames Web results, state testing results, to really measure on how our students are doing. And that's important to get added back into the conference. We also wanted to just do some comparisons with whatever outlet we want. I guess we'd have to discuss on how Iroquois is doing, measuring up to surrounding districts. Obviously, more to be discussed on how we measure that. But we thought that that's a good thing to go through, and in addition to, so when people come to Western New York, that Iroquois stands out as the district that they want to come to.
Giving the timing between now and when our district planning actually happens, the administrators are already in the process of getting ready for that conference with us. How many of these things are things that you see as wanting immediately this summer, and how many of these things are things that you could see being more of a long-term goal?
Well, I'm not even done yet reviewing all the things we wanted to talk about. No, I'm just kidding. Let me just go through the next couple things.
We'll keep going. And you have a week, right?
Yeah, we have a 2-day conference. We wanted at least the board members to go through a thorough review of the financial statements that John Wolski presents or attaches to the agenda, so that all of us understand what we're looking at. And administrators or whoever else could attend that if they're interested. But it's something that I think since I've been on the board, I look through all 38 pages and have questions, but I don't always necessarily know exactly what I'm looking at. So
I'm assuming it'd be okay to have the treasurer come too, because she prepares some of them?
Yep. We wanted to review the strategic plan, what was accomplished in the past year, what needs to be accomplished in the upcoming year. And from a BOE point of view, new member orientation, reviewing the bylaws together, board goals, objectives for the ambassador program, and reviewing exit survey from the vote. It'd be good to get that material ahead of time as well, so we can discuss that, maybe what we're going to do as a result of the feedback that we're getting. And that's pretty much it. So to answer your question, Chuck or Heather, do you have any thoughts on what we could change?
I think some of the things could be implemented, fairly easily. Some things, could be long range. We also, talked about, 2 days in commitment, is it possibility to split those days up? Would it make it easier, for board members to do that? But I think the general consensus was, more dialogue, more discussion. We hear from our administrators, every single summer, and it's great. And it's always fantastic to hear all the successes and stuff. But we also need to know what we're struggling with, because we can't get better unless we know what needs to be fixed. If it doesn't need to be fixed, fantastic. But if we are struggling in areas, we'd like to, know about that. So we as a board know what kind of supports, would be available that we could give, because ultimately, we want our children to excel here at Iroquois. And if we all work together doing that, we can do it. The data was discussed at length, and unfortunately, that's the only real hard measure that we have, and I know with COVID we had gotten away from it, and I know it seems that Western New York school districts don't seem to be as concerned about data since Business First stopped doing the school rankings. But as a board member and a community member, I'm very much interested in how our students are performing. We need to know where we need to get better, what supports we need to provide, not just our students, but our administrative staff, our teachers.
And one thing I did leave out was one point about what are we doing as a district to prepare our students for after high school in regards to supporting and promoting BOCES programs and the trade services and things like that. So
yeah, that's kind of the old harping, when we were talking about college and career ready. It seemed everybody forgot about the career part of it, and the whole concentration to me just seemed college and career ready, but you're just concentrating on college, and we have so many talented, kids, and so many success stories from our students, coming out of BOCES too. The employment opportunities that they have. Some of them shortly after BOCES and are, starting their own companies, So.
I'm having flashbacks of a former board member, Louise, telling us about the different events that she would go to, going to see the PTech programs and the other programs that they have at BOCES. She would be happy to hear that we are still talking about how important those programs are. So, yeah, that's good.
I think I got most of them written down. I think ministers will be happy with this, because I know when the change data happened, they were a little frustrated because that's what they like to look at. So they'll be happy to get back to that because they're still looking at data, talking about it.
Could I just add one thing real quick? The 3 through 8 assessment data will not be back. We usually don't get it until August or September, just so that, we'll have regions data.
That might be a good reason to split it.
Yeah, and that could be, so if I can get that email or the list of it, it'll be the email you sent, because I already know with the new reading program that we're looking at moving in. I talked to the primary principals and said, I keep saying, no, I'm sorry, and said, what is going to be our benchmark? What are we going to look at so we know this is where we're starting, and next year where are we, and the year after, and the year after? And so I think that's a very important, touchstone to put in place, starting mark for them. And then with the other ones, I know the high school administrators have said about the data from the Regents exams and looking at that in comparison. I know they've been doing a lot of work on that, of seeing how grades during the year parallel how they'll do on Regents exams with the different departments. And they've been very supportive in the departments, leaders and teachers about having that continuity. So I think some of these things will be very, very exciting to do. How to get them all in, so if I get that email, I can start trying to plan the time for it, because I know we talked about we're going to be held to a time schedule, and then try to fit that in there and meet with people and how much time do they actually need, because then, like Chuck said, it might go into other meetings or bits and pieces of it. So then we'll have to discuss which pieces are those. Nothing against John, but some of the financial statements, maybe that's just like a work session or something before a regular board meeting where we spend half an hour or something with that. Because that's more informational than discussionary.
There's also the possibility, we could, excuse me, you don't have to be a new board member to attend the ECASB fiscal oversight responsibility training session. You can go take another training session on that if you want. Because I work there, I see it every year, and every year I learn something. I've been doing this for 9 years now, and every year I learn something new when I sit there listening to that training session. So there's also that possibility that if it's a matter of learning and understanding what it is we're looking at and reading, I would invite you to, sign up to come to the training session. Nobody's going to think anything weird if you come. There's other veteran board members who come. So you don't have to be the new guy.
I think NISBA even encourages you to, periodically attend, especially for long-term.
And we do a really bang-up job on it, too. So
Doug, just a quick question. You mentioned data. When you're looking at data, and I think Heather did a great job kind of summarizing, I would make sure, I'm interested to understand, are we looking at an expanded data set, the same data, or new data? Because when you're looking at data, if there is a change in it, then how do you quantify that trend, right, of improvement? And it's only a point to mention, just trying to make sure that, we've done this over the last X number of years, or this is new data coming in that sort of complements it. Because I know we talk a lot about the data, but understanding where it came from, how it's being used, and then how it's being presented will be important to a full understanding.
And that's a perfect statement, because I know in talking to the high school, we typically have a multi-year trend of Regents exams and how kids are performing, graduation trends, and that's been very consistent data. We were using Ames Web results for years, and when we did the district planning conferences, and so my question was, because of the new reading program, do we want to continue with that, or are we going to start a new set and move forward from here since this is new? The unfortunate part about it, how do you compare with where you were before? And that's why I asked them to start thinking about how they want to do that, exactly why you're saying.
Yep, okay.
all right. Anything else? Okay. That brings us to our graduation speakers. So every year at graduation, the board president does a brief, 5-minute address at graduation. However, the board president always offers that to a board member if they have a child graduating. And this year we have 2 board members with children graduating. So I am offering to
Wrestling tournament.
either of you
Wrestling tournament, who wins?
to speak, but only one of you can do it. I suppose I could do a tag team weird routine, but that probably wouldn't be appropriate at graduation.
Abbott and Costello?
Yeah, who's on first? Keith Scott, you're okay? Yep.
Thank you.
All right, so you are officially going to be our speaker at graduation. All right.
And just really quick, I want to say I got to do it last year, and it is really cool, Keith.
It's really funny. I've been board president for 5 of my years on the board.
Yeah, at least.
And I've only spoken at graduation once. And my kids were the ones graduating. So, okay. And then that brings us to a discussion on our a work session date to discuss the superintendent and board evaluation tool. We had talked about whether we wanted to continue using the tool we're using. I think we pretty much all agreed that we didn't, but that means that we need to discuss how we're going to do our evaluations this year. So we need a work session. How would you like to do? Nora, you want to put out dates and we'll, but it means that we all have to do our best to be there again. Yes?
By
When do we want to have it done by? Really, we're supposed to have our discussions done by the end of June before the
I would say shoot by the middle of June.
middle of June, so not necessarily before the next board meeting, which is June 5th.
I think, no, I don't think we need to do, I think, middle of June, I think is really solid.
All right, that works for me.
I would agree.
Okay, all right, good. And then is any other discussions that weren't on the agenda that a board member wants to raise? Oh, hearing none, then we'll move on to our presentation. Our district, reading from the right place. Mr. Hershey and Mrs. Cheney are going to give us a presentation on the district SEL review.
This is Mr. Bennett with us as well. We dragged him along for comic relief.
Hello, Mr. Bennett. We're glad to have you here, too.
Closer? There we go.
I'll let you explain
Not
what
that
this
tall.
grant
I'm
is,
not used
too.
to- There we go. Thanks, Doug. Okay, thanks everybody for having us. I think a quick review. We're here to talk about this opportunity that we were presented with. About a year or so ago, we started working on a couple of grants that came out from State Ed. One of the ones that we were awarded the opportunity to use was a grant that was designed to help improve or facilitate improved SEL, social emotional learning outcomes, or mental health outcomes in students within our community. So we spent time on that. We were awarded the grant. So we're here today to talk a little bit about the grant, a little bit about the information that we gathered to kind of justify the grant, so that I think you guys understand the data that we were looking at, the info we were looking at, as we'd like to move forward, with that grant money to fund some programs, if you will, to help our families here, our community. So just as I have the clicky here, don't I? Well, there we go. So the grant was written, this half of the grant was written to primarily support the development of a family resource or support center. There was other pieces to the grant which were used to fund some of the programs that we've put into place outside of this, some of the professional development we've done and so on, but the bulk of it was here. And in my time here now in 2 years, this has been one of those things that has consistently popped up that I've asked questions about. And how do we support our families outside of the school day? What are we doing to support the needs that have arisen, not just since COVID, primarily since COVID, but it's just also in terms of what is happening in the world around us. We'll share some of that data in a minute. And the answer is up front. We've got a great team of social workers and counselors that what I refer to as student-facing, school-facing supports, right? They are in the trenches. They're dealing with these situations day to day. But what we don't have is what I would refer to as a community-facing resource. So a resource that's designed to take over when these guys have done what they can do, when they've exhausted what they're capable of doing during the day that they have to work with kids. What do we do then? Because we have a lot of families in crisis that I'm not so sure we're necessarily aware of, which I'm going to share some of that stuff, some numbers with you guys as we talk about data. But the idea here is to support our families, to support the children in our families, to then improve their learning opportunities when they're in school. If kids aren't engaged, if there's other things going on that's getting in the way of them participating or even coming to school, obviously they're not learning. So really the end result is all about increasing learning, increasing those outcomes, as Chuck had mentioned, when we get to the end of high school, whether it's graduation rate or, employability or any of those things. Some kids, it's just a matter of keeping them in the game to get to that point. So we'll talk a little bit about that. Something else that we can, that we're looking to do here is build a massive toolbox of resources that don't exist in Elma, Marilla, and Wales. All over Erie County, there are resources available to students, to families that live in Erie County. And I don't see that we've really tapped enough into those resources. And again, this person, this position, this resource would be designed to go ahead and harness the power of all of those things out in Erie County that our families can have access to. Which is why, again, I call it more of a community-facing resource, because a large majority of this position would be facing the community, in the community, working with the community. Other things that are important to this piece is that there are grants out there that we can't access. This person, this role could be seeking those grants. With this, we're hoping to eliminate the need for some alternatives right now for kids. For example, we get into situations with kids sometimes and that have severe social emotional needs, mental health needs, and we kind of run out of steam of what to do in school. Attendance is really bad, participation is bad, their health is bad. And so what happens is, what do we do next from an educational perspective? Many of these kids are now requesting and seeking to be a part of BOCE's online learning program, which is great for some kids. We have a lot of kids there that I don't think necessarily need to be there, right? So part of this is also working with kids, working with families to keep the kids in school, in front of our teachers, in front of our staff, in front of our people, because there's no better place for our kids to be than in our buildings. So, it's wide-ranging what we're looking at when we talk about a family support center. There's actually, this is important I think as well, there's 31 members in the Western New York Family Support Center Coalition. That means 31 other districts that participate, and we're yet to be one of them. So I'm hoping we get to a point, at some point here soon, that we can be a part of that group of people. Anything to add from your guys' perspective there before we get into the meat of this? Okay. And I'm trying to move. Right, I'm trying to move because I know we don't have a lot of time.
This is the time to crack them. Go right ahead.
Nice and neat for you guys. So we built this around some pretty significant talking points, right? So one of them is the challenges that we have to building capacity for mental health support. Thanks, Janice. Appreciate that. And like I said, kids who are in crisis can't learn, period. So how do we mitigate that crisis? Currently, what I'd say about our staff of counselors and social workers and, school administrators, again, is they are spending a vast majority of their time on the ground providing first aid to kids, mental health first aid, right? So what that means clearly is kids come to them in the moment, there's something going on, we've got to deal with it. Okay, it's a very reactive process. That's kind of the nature of the game to some degree, right? We're here for kids. When they come in, we have to deal with what they bring with them so that we can get them ready to learn or keep them in the learning process. And that's, a natural part of their job. So again, as I refer to these guys as school-facing supports, it's increasing the community-facing supports to build the capacity to help in a broader sense.
Quick question, Chris, while you
Yep.
think. I think while you're thinking I shouldn't be talking, but anyways. When you talk about community-facing support, that's not that this person would be counseling, it's connecting them with people in the community that would be doing counseling.
Yes, thank you. So, this person is not the one doing the counseling. It's engaging with, whether it's Spectrum or Gateway or people. There are a number of mental health providers out there that right now we don't have access to. We did. Remember, we had Gateway. We had a counselor or two from Gateway that used to spend some time over across the hall from our office. 2 years ago, she disappeared. Not because she left us for any reason other than she got a job in private practice. Gateway was not able to refill that position. I've checked in with them every couple of months ever since that happened, and they still cannot fill the position. So part of what we're looking for this person to do is coordinate with all of the other agencies and say, how can we get folks in here to help our families out? What are those resources? Who are they? So really what we look to do is we're thinking that these guys get to a point that they can only do so much, and then it gets referred to this support, this person, position, whatever we want to call it. So it kind of funnels up to this person. And with that, I think it's important to note that it is much easier and more effective for one person at the point of that triangle to do that job, to work that role, than it is to have 12 of these folks making individual calls and individual solicitation to, even if we put the pool of places together, if 12 people are making the calls, it's a lot of extra work, it's a lot of redundancy. Chuck?
What does that person look like in that role?
What do you mean?
Are they counselors?
Great question. So what we're looking for primarily, if we can, we're looking for someone who has a background in social work, in counseling, in mental health, because that's really what we're looking for them to coordinate. That's ideal. If you're asking me to wave my magic wand, That's what it is. But it's also about the personality, other things. It's an important piece to be able to connect the community with the greater mental health community resources. So ideally, I'd love to find someone with that experience. A couple things just to point out, that goes along with this, and these are the challenges that I think that I've certainly started to notice. Since the pandemic in particular, and I hate to keep going back to that, but it's a real thing. Our homeless numbers are significant, and I don't necessarily mean in terms of quantity, but in terms of need. We have just over the past year and a half, we've had a handful of families that, just to kind of put it simply, needed far more than anything these wonderful people could have provided to them in the school day in order to keep them potentially from, ending up in foster care or maybe having to bounce around, in the system, in the homeless system, if you will. Our homeschool numbers have gone up. And that in and of itself is not a big deal. But when you look at the kids and the reasons, over the past 18 months as well, so last school year and this school year, 10 of the families, the children who left for homeschooling, have done so for social emotional reasons, mental health concerns. Can't come to school, can't get out of bed, can't get in for any number of reasons. So the families have felt like we have no choice but to continue our children's education at home. And, we support them through that. That's another responsibility of our office. But again, I look at these situations and I say, I want kids in our four walls more than anything. So if we can help that along, that's another area I'd say this person would help to focus on, because we're grasping the resources that are available and hopefully helping to keep those folks in the game. Doug, you look like you're about to say something.
I just agree with you. I mean, you look at the history, 10 years
Yep.
or how long I've been here, and the boards that have come in through here, we have always done, we've added counselors, we've added social workers, we've added psychologists, so that emotional support within, we've done a lot. But as you talk about having someone with a personality, having someone that knows the community, having someone that's able to connect with people, and having worked with social emotional students, that is this outside facing, community facing piece that seems like with other districts we're lacking compared to other districts.
We are, and that's okay, because the work that we do, that these guys do is great. It's just, this is the way things have evolved at this point. I've been fortunate enough to be in other places and to talk to other folks, and I've seen the value of it, which is why I guess I'm kind of passionate about it, standing in front of you guys pleading.
So, Chris,
Yes.
just kind of like the way I'm understanding this, and at least the way I'm visualizing it, is that almost speaking an example, it's a little bit easier, and I know I tend to pick on our athletic director for everything and find her new things to do. But so if like the athletic director is over at the field and she sees a kid that looks like they're having trouble, and she goes over there, and the kid is in crisis, whether he's upset, these are more real than people realize, thinking about suicide. No matter what, she's now is not an athletic director. She has to help this kid. This would give her a point person to go to because she's may not be equipped, or the coach may not be equipped, but now they have a resource they can go to get the help for this child.
Whether it's that person or it gets bounced back to the building principal or one of these guys, because chances are they've been through this, right? And we're there. So that's part of it. And the other, another big piece of it is as the pool of available providers, if you will, is getting shallower, the more and more difficult it is for particularly rural districts like ours to access what providers there are. That's an important stat here because, statistically, rural communities don't have the access to, we'll even start with the internet in some cases, right? So getting online and getting online services, supports, looking things up. Part of our biggest challenge is not so much with the kids as it is even with moms and dads, who want to help, who are engaged in the process, but don't know how to take the next step, don't know what to do next. Even when I could give you countless situations where we've given them the information we have and said, you got to call them. You got to get online. You have to look them up, and they say, okay, and I know they mean well and they want to do it, but it doesn't happen for whatever reason, whether they're working or they're engaged in other family things, whatever it may be. So again, this resource would help to guide those families through those processes. Yeah, please, I'm rambling, which is what I do.
So I wanted to share an example of what this person's role could be. Recently, I was contacted by a friend who's not at all in the district, and she was asking me, because she knows what I do for a living, if I could recommend anybody as a counselor for her granddaughter who was struggling. She's in the 4th or 5th grade. So I said to my friend, sure, I will be happy to, look through my provider list. I made 7 phone calls over the course of 2 days. Of the 7 that I made, no one was available for this student. She was too young for some of them, or many of them were full. And I have to be honest with you, many of the parents who are with children that are in crisis don't have the time or the energy or the understanding to make those 7 phone calls. This is what I do for a living, and I've got a whole network, and we reach out to people. But we really, especially being a rural district, we don't have access to to places that they do in West Seneca or Cheektowaga or Amherst. We really, it's few and far between, and some of the best ones that used to work for Gateway that are now on their own are full. They're not accepting new patients. So that just kind of really caught my attention, because I made the 7 phone calls and they're not accepting people, or the student was too young. And I thought, how is this for a parent whose little one, who they love and want to protect, is struggling and they can't find anybody to help them?
So I just have a quick question with that, and I like that story because it sort of highlights the need. But the question I have is, if that individual was making those 7 phone calls, what are the next steps, right? Because to me, it seems like there's a larger gap in the SEL program and process in order to support the kids that need it. So if we're looking at an individual to take that lead, they make 7 phone calls, what's next, right? Because that takes a significant amount of time.
Right.
I'm not going to go into the details of time studies and so forth, but my point is, how is that story going to be different than the individual that's going to be in the position that is equipped, that's going to be, I'm assuming, doing something very similar?
I guess what I want to point out is I work at Marilla, and so I made 7 phone calls. Mary and Linda both work in the middle school, and if they're each making 7 phone calls, right now we're not coordinated. We are working as islands. We've got the 3 primaries, and then we have the middle and the high school. That person would have to make more phone calls. They would have to get hold of the agencies. They would have to get hold of Best Self. They would have to do that extra reach for us. But I guess what I want to illustrate is, I want to spend my day face-to-face with kids. I don't want to be on the phone calling 7, 10 providers trying to find somebody. And I'm sure my colleagues would agree with me, it's not easy to find people. So having that one-point person handle making our connections in the community and letting us know, hey, this person in East Aurora is accepting new patients between this age, whatever. We just don't have anybody to do that right now.
And I would add to that I think the expectation would be that when the referral got to that level, I'm hopeful that person would not have to make all of those phone calls. They would know, because they're in the game all the time. I know I can't call X, Y, and Z, but I know that this one has openings and I can go directly there. To cut down on time and having to make those phone calls repeatedly. That's part of, I think, the value of having someone at the point there who organizes that information and can control that.
Mr. Hersey, if I can jump in too, going back to something you said towards the beginning of your presentation, was that there are 21 other districts that participate, 31 other districts that participate, and this person would presumably be in contact with those people and would have more resources and knowledge.
They meet regularly, yes.
Is that correct?
Yes, that's 100% correct.
Okay.
Yep. Also found this interesting in working through some data. Chuck? Yeah, go ahead.
Who's making the determination of what kind of support the child needs? I mean, Jim gave an example of,
Yep.
child being on the football field and the AD telling, well,
Yep.
who makes the determination what
So I think there's a couple ways that happens. I mean, one systematic way is our MTSS system at each building. There's constant conversations going on regarding kids and needs, whether it's academic, social, emotional, behavioral, whatever it may be. So kids get funneled into that immediately. So there's conversations with the social workers, with the counselors, quite regularly. So it really starts there. And then again, if we get through a process where we've met on a child, we've brainstormed, we've made some changes, we've tried X, Y, and Z, and it doesn't work, we say, we've got to kick this upstairs. So it would really funnel through. And here's the other piece of it. There could be a situation where there's an immediate crisis that was unexpected that might say, we got to give so-and-so a call to get them involved right out of the gates, because they're going to have, the idea would be that they would have access to resources immediately, or at least understand where to go to get the help we need. That's a crisis situation. This person would clearly be involved in crisis management.
You mentioned some training. You've done some training with staff related to that, because in Jim's example, I would think that bouncing it to somebody else might not be the most appropriate at that point in time. So can you talk a little bit about the
I'll let Mary Jo.
for the grant?
Yeah, so last year, this past year, we started with UB Mental Health, Trauma-Informed Care. And so the support staff, the administrators, and the secondary teachers have received some training with them. And next year, the primary teachers will be receiving it. And then starting this summer, our friend Mr. Bennett and Emily Woida will also be doing some youth mental health first aid training for everyone in the district, including our bus drivers, our secretarial staff, the board members. That way, the purpose of that is for everyone to feel equipped that we identify that a student is in crisis. And what steps can we take? We don't expect any one teacher or individual to be able to solve every problem, but who can they turn to next? So again, funneling it through.
You mentioned the qualifications for this position. You said social work background. Are you looking at a bachelor's degree, master's degree?
It could be bachelor's.
It could be
degree,
bachelor.
Yeah, and again, it's, that's the perfect case scenario, that we're finding someone who's got a background in mental health in one shape, way, or form. But it's, as far as master's, bachelor's, those sorts of things, I'm not as, it's more about the person and their background.
What it would need is New York State certification, because when you can't remain certified unless you have your master's in New York State to be in schools. So they might start off that way, and then it could, they would have to get that eventually. But the grant, remember, is a one-year grant.
So how are we going to sustain that position after the year?
Well, I would say that, that's a conversation to have in a year's time, understanding the circumstances we're in. What we're hoping for is to get off the ground, and I know that might be difficult if we just advertise it as a one-year thing, but I would hope that in a year's time, we're back here having a conversation about the benefits and the value and, how it impacts the community in a positive way that we feel like we have to invest in it.
So really more like 6 months from now.
Sure,
when
yeah,
we
6
start
months,
talking
yeah.
about
Yeah.
the budget for
Yeah, so-
2025, 26.
I think the grant provides a very unique opportunity by having it, because a lot of times you start a program and you're using taxpayer dollars to do it. Now, the grant is still state taxpayer dollars, by all means, please know that, but we're not using local dollars, and there you can evaluate the program, and with the budgets that are coming up, you would say, this is what the grant is, this is what we can do with it, and then the board will have to evaluate, as, with John saying what's happening in future things, what programs are we willing to support, which programs do we want to develop, what data are we looking at? So I think there would be presentations, to the board throughout the year of, this is what's happening with it, and yep, we're moving the right direction, or no, this has to be modified in this way, but we need to get someone in it, doing it, working, making connections, and then getting out to the coalition to say, okay, here's where Iroquois can fit into this puzzle in supporting families.
So, Doug or Chris, so this is an administrative position that's acting a little bit more like a coordinator, and then it's being funded through the grant, and then, to have this point, and then maybe in 6 months or whatever, you come back to us and say, hey, this was great, maybe we should change this, and then we have that conversation at that time.
I would say it doesn't have to be an administrator, in my opinion. Most aren't.
Yeah, I would say most aren't of the 31. I would say in posting for it, we always want the best person. And in doing that, so, Janice is the department head, and when we went to put the counselors into the primary buildings, we advertised it for multiple certifications. So I would say we would, put out there for an administrator certification with experience in SEL, someone with I'm looking for her, a school counselor, I believe is the correct name. Thank you. Whatever the heck you are, because now I forgot, because I was trying to get her right. School, social worker, so got one right, completely forgot the next one. And that way you get the widest net of people applying, because it is a one-year position, and we wanted to get the best person, so we want to attract people coming in and applying for it.
Their primary role, though, would be to act as a coordinator, right? They're not actually counseling, or they're not actually providing mental care.
If they were qualified as such, they could, but that's not the intent of the...
That's what I was asking. Okay.
Yeah, and they would, honestly, they would need to have a personality, because if you have all these people competing for positions, we need someone who can develop relationships with people and, really highlight the needs and know Iroquois to go out there and say, this is why we need it. We're a rural community. This is what we have going on in the community, and this is why it's important to be a champion for the Iroquois students. Are you okay with that?
Yeah, I'm a little conflicted here, and I understand your reasoning, Doug, but why we would add an administrator? I mean, again, you're looking at the public perception, declining enrollment, another administrative. If he's a coordinator or a supervisor, fine. Another administrator and for a one-year position?
Yeah, and that's a tough one, because I don't like the perception of adding administrators. So if the title was a coordinator and they were working under the New York State certification, because any way you do it, the grant says family counselor director. So that would be the school title of what they're doing. Did I get the title right?
Family support?
Family support director.
Well, I mean, that's a generic, if you look across the 31 different places, they have different versions of that title.
So would they be administrator, or would it be a person that we're using whatever certification we can to have the correct one?
Well, also with title comes salary. And, if I'm an administrator, you're going to pay me a little bit more money. And basically, and correct me if I'm wrong, it would be preferable to have someone with experience in the industry, but that's not necessarily needed or required.
Doesn't the grant,
what I'm hearing here?
Doesn't the grant dictate the salary, though?
The grant that was written in there does have a dollar amount in the grant for it of $52,000, maybe some odd change in there, and it does have a spot for the benefits too. And so that would be the salary we would be going out with, that's supported by the grant, because I said earlier how I don't want this to be on the local taxpayer dollars, to put our foot into the pond to see what it is. Now, when we go out there and advertise, if no one applies, we might come back here and say, well, first thing I would do is go, John, Mary Jo, can we write the grant? But that also has its own implications, and I'd come back to the board and say, okay, here's how we'd have to balance it for different salaries.
Because basically we're looking at a person who's going to be a point person and is essentially going to be making phone calls to try to make placements.
Correct. And that's why I think the salary that they wrote into the grant is an appropriate salary for that type of work.
Yeah, but as far as, title and things like that go.
And that might be where we come back in a future year and say, okay, we weren't able to get someone for that salary. Do we look to, Janice, congratulations for transferring you. Didn't take it, but we tried. And
I think it's even more.
And then do something different, but I think that's where the grant has a salary, boom, it's defined. It has the benefits in the grant, boom, that's defined, and then we go from there and we take the put our foot in the pond, and then next year is where the hard discussion happens, and during next year of, did it work? Why didn't it work? Where did we make a mistake? Or, oh my God, it's so successful, we're the best in Western New York, or we're right in the middle of the pack, and this is what we can afford to do now because the grant is for next year. If I was to do it, I'd be very explicit in the creation of the job, that it's a 24-25 school year. It's coming from the grant. I would name the grant. That would be in the posting. And then we would have to discuss where it goes from there, which is very different from what we did in previous years of using grant money when you started, and it was just kind of put out there. I want it very defined so people know when they're applying for it, what it is for and what it's about.
So I got a couple of questions, shifting gears a little bit, and I'm trying to understand, do we have a current process and program today for SEL?
That's a much broader question, because there's many layers to that. I would say we're absolutely developing our SEL programs across the district, from the tier 1 level, which is right in the classroom.
Yep.
All the way up through the programs that, Mary Jo just mentioned, the trainings, the opportunities to get staff up to speed in different areas, whether it's, trauma-informed care, mental health first aid. So yeah, we do. It's growing though. It's evolving.
So with that, that's good.
Yep.
What's the gap? We currently have a gap, and we've talked around it. I'm just looking for a directive. What's the gap that we're trying to fill with this individual?
For me, it's that piece of, we've exhausted what we can do during the 7-hour, school day.
Okay.
The face time that these guys put in with kids and with families, and even with teachers, to help keep things going in school. It's that, then what? This person fills the gap of all of those other resources that we have not yet been able to tap into that are out there. So it's that, I don't know, that top of the pyramid where we've done our tier 1, our tier 2. If you want to look at it from a kind of a hierarchical perspective, it's that tier 3.
Okay.
It's that most intense intervention that some families just need.
Sure.
And it might not be a huge percentage of families, but their need is so intense that it's beyond the scope of what these guys, and I don't mean to keep pointing these guys, but others back there can do.
So you mentioned a coalition, right, or
Yep.
a consortium. What's the barrier of entry there? Why are we not currently in that?
Because we don't have a family support center.
What does it take to
Western New
have?
York Family Support Center Coalition.
Explain that. What does that mean?
So what that means is every district that has a family support center is a member of this organization.
Okay.
And what the organization that they share, they problem solve together. They bring in, when new resources appear or new opportunities arise for community resources, that person will come in and present to the coalition, become an extra resource for the coalition. I've sat in on it in my last life, so I know what it looks like from a user end. It's just like any of these other, whether it's my special ed directors association or the superintendent's association, it's a networking community that, to be a part of, you have to have a family support center.
And that family support center requires someone to manage it? I'm trying to pull the pieces together.
So trying to pull it together.
This person would sit on that.
Yes, this person would be a part of that
They
coalition.
would participate.
Yes, so trying to use Chris's words to pull it together, he said, we have people doing the facing day-to-day in school. They're being bogged down with other things that are community facing. We don't have we don't have a person in place to do this community facing piece. This person would fill that hole, that gap we have that is getting in the way of our facing day-to-day people, that's creating an inefficiency for them. So what you would get out of this one position is greater efficiency for our facing day-to-day. And then we would have a person now that can go to the community facing and establish greater resources which would further enhance students and their ability to be in school and attending school. Did I summarize that okay?
Can I jump in here for a second? I don't know, we're a runaway board, we like to ask questions.
I'm good. I love it. I'd rather have that.
That's why you get 5 minutes, because
You do have, I'm looking at the slide and I'm thinking, that's not the last slide.
I got really two.
Have we completely
Yeah.
derailed you, or you?
No,
I'd
whatever.
like to.
You're the boss. I'm good with whatever you tell me.
Let's let you finish your actual presentation
Okay.
so that we can then ask more
Yeah,
questions.
there's really only a couple more. That's why I kept it, Doug's like, keep it short. You only got 10 minutes, man. I'm like, okay.
Well, see,
Good luck
the
with
part
that.
I left off, Chris, is you got 10 minutes, they got an hour.
Oh, yeah, well, yeah, so you're accurate. This was another one of those things that popped up to me. And so I get a lot of these phone calls. I'm not just the director of special ed, of course, it's director of student services. So anything that affects student learning, student services, student issues, I get a lot of the phone calls to help problem solve, which I like. I love that part of my job. It's not just special ed. So it's a little bit of everything. And this is one of the ones that keeps popping up. So if we're just using our free and reduced lunch rates as a measure of poverty, our free and reduced lunch rate has increased 400% in 20 years. 20 years ago, we were at 5%. We're now at 20%. And that's just of people who report, right? So I know there's others out there that don't. You know, as we've talked and gathered research and information, and 20%, relatively speaking, may not seem high, but it is, and it's rising. And it's, if you look at, when I get to the next slide, not yet, it all ties together. The families that fall into this ballpark are oftentimes, you can change it now, I suppose, we'll keep moving, Jane said so, fall into this data as well. Our poverty level's rising. We do have some challenges with attendance, and it's not for a lack of people trying real hard to keep kids in school. Between our social workers, our counselors, our building leadership, our SRO team, they work very hard at keeping kids in the game. The kids who are not coming to school are the ones that just can't get out of the house. They can't, whatever their mental health needs are prohibiting them from getting to school. So if you look at this, the state has determined that anything more than 10%, if you miss more than 10% of your days, that's considered chronic absenteeism. Our rate right now, as of the writing of this presentation, which was 140 days, we have 15% of our student body who are considered chronically absent. An additional 5% that are within 1 day of being chronically absent. So we're nearly 1 in 5 kids are considered chronically absent. And when you look at those kids and the reason why they're absent, like I said, every single one of them ties back to some severe mental health crisis or need. Family crisis. There's so much that ties into this. Again, I could give you story after story of, it's kids living with grandparents, great-grandparents, broken families. The trauma that these kids have faced many of them in their lives is more than, we can really connect to. And those are the
Just to interrupt there
families.
real quick, when he says trauma, he's not talking about COVID.
No, oh God.
So, because a lot of people go right there,
Yeah, no.
everyone went through trauma.
No.
This is not trauma from COVID.
No.
This is severe trauma.
Yep.
This is
Yep.
other trauma.
So, I took the average, actually Janice pulled this together, the average of the middle school and high school, so secondary kids, top 5 at the high school, top 5 in the middle school. The average of those was 54 days. So on average, all right, of the top 5 kids most absent, it was 54 days. The most was 88 days. And I'm not even talking about out of district kids, because that's a whole different ballgame. Kids that are still ours that attend placements. That's 36 hours of missed instruction per course at the secondary level. At the elementary level, you're talking at the top 5 average. Top 5 average elementary student has missed 27 days of school. At 2 hours a day, that's 54 hours of lost literacy instruction. So think about how that just snowballs.
I think what's important to see here too, because people can say, secondary kids, they skip school, they skip classes, they're making their own decisions. But when you look at the elementary number, that's a family decision.
Mm-hmm.
The elementary kids really, you're going to school today, and that's where the parents are moving them there. So, please don't think it's young adults making these decisions. In these cases, a lot of it.
So the next logical question we often get when we talk about this as well, where is CPS? Where is PINS? Where are the resources that have already been in place for these sorts of things? They don't happen anymore. PINS and CPS are so overwhelmed that if the children are clothed, fed, warm, safe, have a bed, parents are making a reasonable effort, they're not taking it. So you file a PINS petition, persons in need of supervision, which is a court action, and they will ask the same questions. Well, is the child safe? Are they involved in the legal system? Drugs, alcohol, crime? No? You know what? We have bigger fish to fry. So we used to be able to rely on resources such as that to help intervene, but not always in a combative way. CPS, oftentimes we think that's going to lead to, it's a resource. And they would provide wrap services to families. They would provide some of what we can no longer access. So, we look at these numbers, we look at the last set of numbers, we can pop to the last slide. You guys have seen, I didn't include the data. We've talked about adverse childhood experiences. It's a study, it's a clinical study that's been done. Part of our role as educators is to limit the effect of those adverse childhood experiences to the greatest ability possible, right? And those ACEs, those adverse childhood experiences, are things, abuse, neglect, household dysfunction, all of those things add up. And kids with a higher, there's an actual data collection on this where you can correlate the amount of ACEs a child has experienced with lifelong health, quality of life issues. Direct correlation. So when we look at the bigger picture, I find it hard to not do whatever we can to help, limit these situations for these kiddos and these families. It's not just the kids, it's the entire family, it's the community. How's that?
Where you guys?
What questions?
No, I was just gonna kind of make a statement. When I look at this, and this is not an area, that normally, I spend a lot of time in, and normally I am very slow and concerned about any increase in expense or adding anything. On this particular issue, though, when we have 20% of children who are in danger, or whatever term you want to use, I just can't, in good conscience, not, my opinion only, take advantage of something that, at least for this year, will have no cost, just to see how it works. I know there's concerns about what happens later down the road, and I think it's a very valid concern, and I'm always concerned about that. But I think the negative is too high, not to explore this further. I just never want to be sitting on this board when, God forbid we lose a child because there's something that we didn't do or we didn't have a resource. And to try it and see there's a benefit to it when it's funded by a grant, I just, in my opinion, I strongly would think it's something that we should look at and consider and do.
I think that's what we're, at this point, hoping for. I put this sort of position along the same lines as, our team of SROs. It's that important,
Yeah, and as Jim said, it really is a no-brainer, right? We have the grant money. The concern is, where do we go forward, after that? And we will have to address that in the future. But a bigger concern that I have in listening to this, there's currently 31 school districts that are participating in this. Do we know what their success rate is in finding placements? Because I'm seeing this as, well, yeah, we're coordinating everything under, one umbrella here to reach out. The problem is, will they have any more success reaching out than anybody else? It seems that there's a lack of services just available out there, and they have reached their saturation point. So and I'm very hopeful, but can you tell me what difference this will make?
It's a good question, and you're absolutely right. I mean, the resources that are out there for all of us to have, you know, and so you're right, we're all pulling, every district is pulling from the same pool. I think the power in this is the collaboration to problem solve together. You know, I don't know that I can specifically give you that bit of info that you're looking for to, you know, right now, to say this is why it's going to be different or how it's going to be different. But what I do know is that right now we have no chance of accessing all that stuff because we just don't have the personnel or the power right now to pursue.
Well, I'm just trying to determine where I should set my expectations here. I mean, I want my expectations to be up here, you know, but if they're down here, you know, it's...
I know.
Well, yes.
Yeah. I just, you know, I think of even a handful of situations without clearly getting into, you know, any specifics. Even if 3, 4, or 5 of the scenarios that are bouncing around in my head right now were made better by this, that's a huge success.
It just has to be one.
Right, it really does.
I mean,
it really does just have to be one, because, you know, they're that significant. Yeah, please.
I just want to address the question about the family sports centers. We tried to have a family sports center years ago. We did the research, we gathered things. The previous superintendent, I don't know, Chuck, were you on the board then? I don't know if you were.
No, I was at the very end of that.
Very end, but I don't think, I think the Family Support Center was before you, that we were doing the psychologist when you came on.
Yeah, we did the
board, and
psychologist,
the
yeah,
support center
we
was
had
before
discussed
that.
family
We tried
support
years ago,
back
and-
when we did the Gateway, when they came in.
Correct.
We were
Yeah,
talking
and we were
about that.
unsuccessful.
Yeah.
I have to tell you, I have worked here almost 3 decades, and I've had some of your children as my students. And Iroquois is different than it was when I started in 1996. We are facing
Way different.
more real-world challenges than we did before. We have great people, we have marvelous families and kids, but we do have challenges that we have not been facing in my whole time here. And I fear that if we aren't more proactive and at least try this with this opportunity that's been presented to us, we're going to regret it. We're going to keep muddling through, and everybody works so hard. I don't know if anybody's really spent a day or even a couple hours in one of our offices, in the student support office in the high school or in the middle school or even at the elementaries, just to see how hard people are working to help the kids be successful. We need a little help. We need a little help to kind of get it across the finish line. And as Chris said, there's stories bouncing around my head. We can't share information on families, and we can't share the confidential things we are aware of. But there's so many times where we feel like we're handcuffed, our hands are tied. We can't really do what we need to do because we don't have the resources to be successful.
Doug, I guess for Mr. Superintendent, for I guess that what it really comes down to, is this a position that you, as our superintendent, recommend?
Yeah, is this your last slide?
Yeah.
Josh, you can go back to live and take this off so everyone can see the discussion. Oh, never mind. Yeah, I think it is, and you know, how I would phrase it is, in opening the II, we did the facing day-to-day, we improved that. In our district, if you look at the administrator and student support team ratio, before opening the II, it was 100. Afterwards, it was 95. So we're in better shape with that, with opening the II than we were before. I look at other comparable, and this is something I presented to the board a few months ago. Other 7 districts around us, you know, if we're at 95, they're at 139, 177, 141, 128, and so on. They're all in the hundreds, so we're doing very well with what we have there. What they articulated very well is this piece we're missing. I think there are people that would be willing to be in this position, that know the district, that could help out. I would recommend having this position. In March, I talked about it, the board asked, and rightfully so, for more information, more data. I think Chris and his team were the best people to present it. And I said in that piece, we needed, if I remember my words in March, I might be off a little bit, but we said we need this piece for the district, we need another piece, a piece of this position carved out to help out on some things going on in the middle school through what kids are going on there. And I think this affords the opportunity for us to go out and see what can be done. So to Chuck's question, where's the bar? What can we do? We can see what it is and get some of the data that Keith asked for of, here's what it is, how we work, get involved in the coalition, and learn what we don't know since we don't have this. And then have another discussion a year from now on that.
Okay, so yeah, so I mean, and then I obviously want to hear everyone else's thoughts, just my thoughts alone, with your recommendation. And I know it's not the official point where we do it, but I'd like to see, are you ready to create this position?
We
Or
are.
post for it, I mean?
Yeah, we are ready to go forward with it. I would want to cast the net as wide as I could.
Yes,
for
I
it,
would
with
agree.
titles that you could get someone in, because we want to get someone good, and that's what we've done here. Always, we have an interview committee. I would want someone on the board from there. So if there's someone that has an expertise or experience in dealing with this on the board, that would be great to have them sit on it, because then they could be.
do it.
And well, before
I wasn't even looking over that.
before we get there, in the interest, because I think it's extremely important and time sensitive, we discuss it, on the time to add something to the agenda, but I would personally want to see, moving this to the agenda to authorize Doug to at least post for this position.
That would be something
What would we be posting it as? I mean, that's the question I would have.
Well, I would post it the widest net we could. I would want experience in dealing with SEL. I would do administrative, school counselor, social worker. Salary would be the same no matter what position it is at the 52 that's in the grant. That's what it would be posted at. That's, someone came in and said, well, I want more. The answer would be no. This is what it is that's in the grant.
Yeah, but we don't need to make this an administrative position.
No, you don't.
And you can still cast the net, but, I mean, to tell you the truth, the need is definitely there, and this is an opportunity we can't squander. I would not be willing to add an administrator or what would be termed an administrative post for this, though. Let me ask, how many of the 31 other school districts have administrators in that position?
On this list, none.
Okay.
They're mostly, from the ones that I can tell by the position, they're social workers.
I mean, that would make sense to me. Someone in the industry, they have the contacts, they know the language,
So would it be would the post be then a service center coordinator?
Whatever we feel is most appropriate for our needs.
Well, the title would have to be what's in the grant. We're locked into that title, because that's what was written in the grant. It would be the SED certifications that we would put under that title. So it's kind of like civil service says we have senior clerk typists. What do we call those? Administrative assistants that used to be called secretaries. So that would be like SED. You would put out for these titles, and then you would get whichever person, but no matter what certification they have, they would be family support director.
I think we're kind of getting hung up a little bit on some semantics. Like, you want to have somebody who has specific certifications, and if casting the net wider means adding in that they have it, that we accept somebody with an administrative.
For casting the net, that's fine. But I just heard of the 31 districts that have a family, there are 0 administrators. The majority are people in the industry. And I would think that that's what we would want to shoot for. Cast your net, and hopefully we'll catch, the best one. But
I think in casting the net, though, if in the announcement it says that we would accept somebody who has an administrator certification, to make it so that we can get a candidate who has experience in SEL but maybe not completed the certification process for that, but they have an administrative
Here's what
one.
I can tell you along those lines. Some of these folks do have their certificate, they're not employed as an administrator.
Okay,
so
all right,
yeah,
that's what I'm saying,
Which is great.
So-
That's
in-
perfect.
okay.
That's, fine.
Thank you,
That's-
Chris, that's what I was trying to,
Yeah,
that's what I'm trying to get to.
They
Gotcha.
would be willing to accept $52,000 plus a year.
Yeah,
right.
right. And somebody who wants to be an administrator probably isn't going to take $52,000 a year, but we can
So
hope.
a few things that come up to my mind, and I think I echo with what Chuck is saying with regards to administrator, not administrator, coordinator. But what's most important to me, and I think Chris and team, you've done a great job explaining kind of the need, right? There's no question we want to do something. My concern, and it's really more to Doug, is we're interested in doing something. I am concerned that one single individual, we're putting a whole list of criteria on that individual to then be successful, right? So success criteria, success metrics, building a program, as Mary Jo had explained, training is going to a year or so out. And we're going to come back in 6 months and say, how well did we do? We have to temper those expectations, I believe, based on just realistic timing in the education system. So when I'm looking at it from a 1 year, individual to come in and help facilitate, to me, in my mind, in the world I live in, is more of a project manager that comes in, identifies the resources, pull those pieces together, makes those connections, because to be very blunt, it is not scalable to have a single point of contact in a district this size. You have hundreds of kids at need, you look at the numbers, and, we start to implement something. I want to make sure, and I think that's really for you, Doug, is to make sure that the criteria at which the person will be doing and the scope and responsibility is paced at which we can be successful to incrementally move the program forward. Because as everybody does, here's the job description, here's the list, I want everybody to do everything, and then you hand pick, and it's tough, right? And you'll miss people that you could have hired, you'll hire somebody that maybe is not a good fit. My ask is making sure that we take a step back and just make sure we understand what we're doing, what the criteria is, and what is success. How do we want to take what Chris has done so far in the team and get it to that next level within a 12-month period? I want to be able to use the money correctly, but the concern I have is you have someone in there, everybody, it's like a hot potato here. You're now responsible, it's your role, and now this person's inundated with clerical type work, which is not actually impacting community. So we have an opportunity to make sure we set the tone and set the pace at which we want to bring someone in. And from what I can read, the program is sort of pieces there, but we've got opportunity to improve.
Yeah.
And I think I'm trying to take that in and make sure that I'm communicating it correctly, but more importantly, as I look at a quote-unquote new hire being fiscally responsible, I want to make sure that we can look back and say, yeah, we made a good decision because here's the scope, here's what they did, they hit 80% of it, our program is better. Now we have a different discussion, whether it's the program solid enough to, as a tier 1, we're impacting, as Mary Jo's talking about training, or do we have to hire someone different? And so I think taking a step back might be a good opportunity now before we just jump in.
We did discuss that. We did talk about, taking all the information we know from all 31 of these people and making it our own, based on our needs, what our measurement are, our metrics are, and I think for that very reason, so we don't set ourselves up for failure.
Sure.
I think that those are all good suggestions, but I also think that starts to bring the board into the operations. That is that's why we have the administrators we have, for them to do that. I think what they're asking of the board is, do you support us moving forward with this? And then with that suggestion, they can go back to the table, but I think that's kind of bringing us into something that's really not for us to decide. What we need to decide is, do we support this program? Are we going to, they're asking for us to allow them to use the grant money the way it was written to start this program. I, for one, say yes.
And that's what I was trying to say, man, as clear as, Jane, I didn't want to get involved in titles, or I just wanted to say, let you guys and the superintendent decide what's the best way it should be posted. I just want us to authorize you guys to begin your work.
Thank you.
So in saying that, I took the liberty because I think it's important for social emotional support about recommending a position, and how I would have it worded if you were to add it tonight would be for one full-time family support director position for the 24-25 school year as funded by the recovery grant. That way it's very clear what it's for, dollar amounts. Then what I'd want to do is sit down, because I know I've had talks with multiple people, and I don't want to say names, I can't remember exactly which one they all were, about how this would be exactly what you're saying. This is the first step into it, of what would work, what would do, and really, you're right, it's about getting set up and geared up to, this is what's successful, what's not successful, and this is what we need to keep it growing and going, whether it's project manager, developer, research analysis, but we need to move forward with it because there's a problem and we need to go in and discover what we can do here for Iroquois, which also is kind of neat because if it's a 1 year after that, if we need to tweak it, we can. So to answer your question, yeah, that would be my recommendation, is to move forward with it.
So at that point, that would be something, another item that we would add to the agenda if everybody is wanting to make that, take the superintendent's recommendation. So we'll add that to the agenda. Somebody will have to make that motion, and it'll become, what would it be, 25.14?
They would.
I'll give you the number in a minute.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
And they would actually not be part of the consensus if we're adding them?
No, we can add.
Would that work?
Yeah,
I must have died.
I think so. I'll let you guys figure that out.
Never mind, we're all set, I'm wrong.
Okay.
Hopefully.
We don't care about it.
Got scared.
Why would it have shown?
Yeah, we have two things that we would consider.
Thank you very much. I think your presentation is great. John, did you want to say something? Because we just had you sit there.
I was going to say, Mr. Bennett, you really just stole the show. It's amazing.
So really what it was is Mr. Bennett, if we didn't get to a good spot, Mr. Bennett was going to clean up it. So you don't have to be a clean up today? We're afraid of you, sir.
Thank you so much for your 10-minute presentation and your hour-long grilling of questions. Thank you. All right. That brings us to the superintendent report. Item number 9 on our agenda, Mr. Superintendent.
So number 9, I'll try to be quicker than the last one. Responses from last month, public comments. We didn't have any public comments. I did have one individual write in to Nora. They weren't able to make it tonight to speak. Below comment, like read during the meeting, the newsletter. Whoops, sorry. Oh, I'm sorry, this is read under comments, my mistake. So I don't have any comments from last month's public comments. What I have, though, is recognitions. So this will be quick. Whoa. No, it's really not that bad. So the first recognition is Heather. Heather Jacobs, so congratulations, Board Achievement Award from New York State School Boards Association. And this is for leadership development training of 75 points. So congratulations to you. Now, she also won, congratulations again, Heather, we'll just stick with you. You also won another leadership development opportunities for another 150 points for this school year. So for attending all those and developing your skills, thank you so much. Chuck, in his last year of being on the board, and thank you for all your years of service, New York State School Boards Association, leadership development opportunities, you had a total of 250 points. No, you only get 1, she gets 2, sorry, she outdid you. You get a free registration for a one-day seminar, so hopefully you will pass that on to another board member, but you also get a binder to go with it, so congratulations. Now we get into Rising Star Awards from Erie County Association of School Boards. Dave Lowry, what's his title there?
He's the
Executive Director, just left, so he's going to miss this. Heather, again, attended 7 or more programs. Whoops, you don't need to get this. That's just my notice. Congratulations and thank you. Jane attended 11 or more, becoming a member of the Shining Star Club. So congratulations to you. Buses are very important, getting kids to school safely, and they continue their streak. And I've lost track of how many years for our transportation department. New York State Department of Transportation for our school. The out-of-service rate is 0%, which means 100% of our buses were always in service. For all of what they did, inspections were 112 for this report, so congratulations to that. Congratulations to our world language students and teachers on their recent presentation to fulfill requirements for seal of biliteracy. This is a lot of work for the students. This year, representatives from New York State Education Department joined the presentations, so they were actually there, and we're very impressed with the degree of difficulty and professionalism of our students. Special recognition goes to Mr. Curry and Mrs. Gasky for their continued leadership that led to the program's expansion this year. So congratulations to the students, and thank you for the teachers supporting them. Kayla Wadoka and Jacqueline Long ran the STEM night. Student leaders, students led their stations and guided many families through each activity. Huge program, lots of students attending, and this this is from a parent of a 4-year-old daughter who came in, and they're still talking about it, so thank you very much for that email. We have students that are in the National Save Promise Club. They went to the National Save Promise Club Youth Summit. This is a group led by Judy Slowick, and we had 3 individuals that went to this national summit in Charlotte, North Carolina, did an excellent job presenting workshops. It's centered on their mentorship of our 5th grade students, that they go down there and work with the students. You heard some of those 5th grade students speak of their experience. A lot of positive feedback, and this is part of our Sandy Hook Promise, so congratulations to them. Michaela, we're switching to sports. She's a wrestler. She went to the New York State Freestyle Wrestling Championship, bringing home gold for the U16 division, and the right to compete in the U.S. Marine Corps National Championship in Fargo, North Dakota. I'm always wanting to go to Fargo, so she's lucky. So congratulations to her. Good luck in Fargo. All ECIC, this is all Western New York high school sports. And this is for the winter season. I know we're almost done with the spring season, but the way meetings go, Sportsmanship Award went to Justice for Iroquois, so congratulations to him. ECIC Division 6 Co-Players of the Year, Justice also won that. Super seniors are students who have carried a 90% plus average for over 6 previous semesters. I'm a significant player in a winter sport, and at Iroquois, Samantha did that for indoor track, and Samantha also was the All Western New York Scholarship Athlete winner. Scholarship athletic teams. I love this with the teams. The boys varsity hockey had an over 90, so these are not only were they athletes, but scholars. Boys varsity ice hockey over 90%, boys basketball over 95%, girls varsity basketball over 96%, varsity boys bowling over 91%, unified bowling over 95%, co-ed varsity rifle over 92%, girls indoor track over 92%, boys indoor track over 97%, boys swimming was over 94%, varsity cheerleading over 94%, girls wrestling over 95%, and with 75% of the teams averaging, that's just how they qualify, 75% have to have it 90% or higher. So that is excellent for scholar athletes. Thank you so much for their hard work and dedication. And that is what I have, so thank you.
All right, that brings us to recognition of guests on agenda items only. I believe that these individuals need to wait until the end of the meeting, correct? I do want to recognize, again, that we have Karen Howard here from Senator Gallivan's office. Our Executive Director, David Lowry from ECSB, was here for a little while. And we do have, he went to the concert. Of course, yeah. And I do want to recognize that both the people running for the school board seat are both in attendance tonight. So wave your hands so that everybody knows who you are. If you have any questions for them about their candidacy, there they are. That brings us to discussion on agenda items 13.01 to 25.13. 25.13 is not part of our consensus agenda because it does include one of our board members, and so that will be voted on separately. But we do include it in our discussion. So is there any discussion on any of the items?
In regards to 2501, for the Red Hawks resolution, I'd had several community members come up to me asking Doug what we're going to be doing with the chief's clothing, chief's attire, anything that's chief's related. What are our plans to?
Yeah, so right now we're going to be collecting all that. Uniforms, we were probably going to go through the same process we've done before of looking at them, of what we would retire and move forward. It's hard to go with uniforms because how do you offer that up to people? Also, there's a sensitivity to the Native American community of giving things out for them. Historical Society we're working with, like the totem pole, gym floor.
But why is there a sensitivity to the Sonic Nation
just from
of what we do with our stuff?
The whole reason of what was brought forth from the state of their identity associated with the mascots that are on it. What we learned when Jacinta Garcia came in and spoke about the nations and their feelings with it. So we haven't made any clear decisions of what happened. I want to get together and see all what is there.
Because I think a lot of the community would, I think it's an opportunity for a nice community event. I don't see any sensitivity towards the Seneca Nation at all. I see a lot of community members that are asking, like, hey, what are you guys going to do with the stuff? Let's celebrate our history here and not dispose of, or, I know the Historical Society is interested in the totem pole, and that makes sense, but what are we going to do with the other stuff?
Yeah, right now we're going to collect that and look at it for everything. We can revisit that. I can go back and think about it. I did reach out to see where Native Americans were. I haven't received any phone call back from the president of the nation as to what they thought about it.
But I'm confused, like, what do they have to do with what we do with the rest of our chief stuff?
I think it comes from the whole process of looking at this and the state's viewpoint on it.
The state should have nothing to do with what we like our mascot stuff. The Seneca Nation could have, I guess they weren't super responsive when we tried to keep the chief, and I don't know why we would be asking them for guidance on what we do with our chief stuff. I don't want to see anything disposed of. I think it's a wonderful opportunity for community members maybe to come together. Like, for example, this baseball field has a huge, beautiful mural on it.
Mm-hmm.
So, somebody might like that. Somebody might, having a silent auction or something. Are we going to just throw stuff out, or what are our plans?
We didn't have a plan of throwing anything. We had a plan of collecting it.
And then
to one thing to see exactly what we had to go from there, because there are certain items that have names, like there's something hanging on a wall at Tapestry that the individual who created it asked for that back. So we're looking to give things of what people created back to those people if they wanted it. The mural down there on that's a wrap. I'd have to look into that. I don't even know if you peel that off, if it would come
It's just
off.
an example.
No, it's a great example, because I don't know if it come in one piece. There's other pieces, like the name on it, where there's a Native American head on that, would we buy a whole new sign, or would we be able to refinish that and turn it over? So I'd be more than happy to look at it and come back with a defined plan.
I
to the
would
board.
just, I would just say, I mean, obviously, because the mascot itself is a little bit separate from this, and, I do remember that, we did reach out to Native Americans, and they did not respond. So I think the right thing we should do at this point is give the administration a chance to come up with a plan, and then come back to us with what that plan would be. I don't think we're gonna figure it out right now,
Next board meeting.
but I guess the only ask would be, could you come back to us with what your recommendation and plan would be at the next board meeting?
What if it doesn't get hold of the donation, what do we do with that?
Well, they haven't responded, so I would say, so if they're not going to, that's why I would say I can move forward with developing.
I mean,
a
even
plan.
if they do respond, if they say to go have a burning party, are we gonna do that? I mean,
Oh, I'm not saying I would do it, I would
But-
just want to understand what, I don't want to have drama around this, it's gone so smooth, so I wouldn't want something to have or be created that would put Iroquois in a light that's unfavorable. But without a response, that leaves it, I would say, into our ballpark of what to do.
What was that event that you held over at the track, Sunrise, Sunset, what was it, the Sunset?
It was the senior sunset.
Why couldn't stuff be just handed out to the middle schoolers and ninth graders and all the kids come by and the last chief, and then move around?
Yeah, and that's where, like, even some of that word I want to be sensitive to, because there are still chiefs, I would say we're the last Iroquois chiefs, the last Iroquois school chiefs, getting that word and message across, because there are still people that identify as chiefs. And that's where I want to continue how well we've been doing sensitivity. So whether we hand it out and, would someone who graduated a year ago be accessible to it, or would it only be students who are currently using uniforms now? That's what I'd want to look into. I would just want to look and think about rather than make a snap decision.
Yeah, I think it remains the same, that, you have to, come up with a plan and come back to us on it. I mean, that's, I think, where we are with it.
And I look at some uniforms that, there would be one piece of it will say the shorts or the socks or whatever piece that we won't be using next year, and I don't have that information on hand, because we'd be still using the tops and say the bottoms were not. So then, you wouldn't get a full uniform if something was like that. So I'd want to go through and sorry, I'll be quiet. I do that, I over-explain, I'm good with it.
I think we're good with giving it back to you and getting a report back at the June meeting. That's good. Okay, any other questions on anything else on the agenda? I'm trying to see if we have.
I just want to jump in. We got some people that I want to congratulate. We've got some people going from provisional, temporary to permanent. Don Pollack and Dina Ladico are joining us as senior clerk typist. We got Marie Kuzma is joining us as a bus driver permanently. And then we got new faces coming into the district. Amber Klein for PE, Rhiannon Urquhart for art, Claire DeMarco and Angela Mount are both joining us as speech teachers. So we got some new faces joining us here at Iroquois next year.
Wonderful. Good. Thank you. Thank you. And we do have 4 donations under 25.07, and it's always nice to acknowledge when somebody is giving us some money. So some of them are for scholarships, some of them are for the specific programs, the phys ed department. So thank you very much for donations. Anything else? Okay. Then, is there a request to withdraw any items from the agenda? Okay. Hearing none, is there a request to add specific items to the agenda?
Yes, I would like to add the resolution on electric buses to the agenda.
Okay. Yeah.
Second.
Discussion. All in favor? Okay, that item will be added to our agenda.
I would also like to add allowing the superintendent to post for the SEL position.
Okay. Do I hear a second? Okay, discussion.
Was there a board member that when we get to the interview phase that would be willing to be on it.
Heather.
We drafted Heather. All right, good.
I got her eye contact during it, so, yeah, okay, so.
We all vote without her, or no?
All right, discussion. All in favor? And that motion carries. That will be added to the agenda. So can I have a request to approve the consensus agenda items 13.01 to, now what are the numbers?
Do we skip?
The numbers are the same. I assigned the bus resolution 25.00 and the SEL position 25.008.
Okay,
The numbers will remain the same.
okay. So can I have a motion?
I move.
Second.
Discussion. All in favor? And that motion carries unanimously. That brings us to 25.13, volunteer. Can I have a motion to approve item 25.13?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Chuck. Okay. Discussion. And again, we're voting on this separately because it involves one of our board members. He can't vote for himself. Okay. So, all in favor? Opposed? And abstains? Okay. That motion carries. Congratulations, Bob. You are now a volunteer. Again.
Just adding to the long list of volunteers.
All right, that brings us to recognition of guests, and we do have 3 guests who would like to be recognized. The first one is Sal Carlino, yeah, it's an O, okay. And he would like to speak about...
Mr. Schofield and members of the board, thank you for allowing me to speak this evening. I'm here to talk with you with a deep sense of disappointment and concern regarding the elimination of the Code of Conduct officer within the Iroquois School District. As a member of this community and someone who deeply invested in the welfare of our children, I feel compelled to express my dismay. He has been an indispensable asset to our district, embodying qualities that are not only commendable, but essential in the nurturing of our children. He has consistently demonstrated a commitment to their well-being, dropping everything to ensure that each and every child receives the attention and support they deserve. His dedication extends beyond the realm of athletics as he tirelessly looks out for those in need and provides invaluable assistance to families throughout the community, to which my own children have experienced firsthand. Furthermore, he's proven to be a pillar in our community, embodying the values that we hold dear. His relentless advocacy for the welfare of our children sets a standard of excellence that we should all strive to emulate. It is deeply concerning to me to see someone of his caliber and dedication being let go. It's disheartening to witness this key position being eliminated. As an educator with 27 years of experience and someone who has witnessed firsthand the repercussions of removing key components from school environments, I implore you to reconsider this decision. The morale of both staff and students is at stake here, and we cannot afford to undermine the foundation of support and care that individuals like he provides. Finally, his service and dedication to the district and its families should have afforded him the opportunity to finish his career on his terms, not with the stroke of a pen. He'll be sorely missed, and this decision should be reconsidered because it not only affects him and his family, but all Iroquois families who've been touched by his selflessness and dedication. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next is Jake Stick, speaking on the same issue.
Good evening. I've been asked to read a letter that was created by a concerned, dedicated educator, and I just want to show up and give support to this individual and the position. I'm a graduate of Iroquois. I have 5 children at Iroquois, 3 in the middle school, 2 in the primary school. It's very important to me that I was here to read this letter. Let me start out with thank you for your time and dedication. Also, thank you for recognizing a need and filling that void. You did this with our SROs. You saw a need dictated by tragedies in school settings and a need to keep staff and students safe. You made an investment in us all by bringing in school resource officers. Thank you. You saw a gap in human resources, and you hired a full-time human resource person and secretary. Another investment. Thank you. I stand before you today asking for you to once again acknowledge a need, provide a solution, and make an investment in kids. I'm talking about a position that, to my understanding, will be removed at the end of this school year. You may refer to it as a contract that is not renewed. We would be losing a full-time administrator at the middle school because we are losing one grade level. This does not seem reasonable. This is not the same middle school student body of 10 years ago, or even 5 years ago. Students of 2024 come with more social, emotional needs than they did just a short time ago. Losing a position leaves a gaping hole in meeting the needs of children. Let's be clear, this administrator does come with a face and a name. This face that can be associated with the position not only meets the needs of today's learners, but also changes the lives of children so that they can grow into contributing, happy, academically sound individuals. Is that not the goal? This position needs to stay because it serves kids' best interests. There is already in place an established bond of trust, accountability, and support with the middle school children and parents. Just like SROs, it is necessary given today's school climate. I've spent a career advocating for kids, all kids, especially those that need extra care. I'm disheartened that we would cut an administrator that serves the needs of this community. If removed, it makes me question if you truly understand the trauma that today's children face. I have an exceptional understanding in this area since I have a liaison in UB's School of Social Work Department, as well as doing research in this area. I believe in kids. I believe in supporting their well-being. I believe in doing what's right for every child. I beg of you, please don't discount the needs of those who struggle. If you do, you will confirm to these individuals that they do not matter. We need this position to remain in the middle school. We need the face that goes with it. Please stand up for all kids. Listen to the research and the data as you move through this process.
I'm sorry, your time's up.
Thank you.
Thank you. And the third person is Nancy Carlino, who would like to talk about SEL.
As you mentioned, my name is Nancy Carlino, and I appreciate your time today and certainly your dedication. I am a parent of 2 daughters in this district, as well as a substitute teacher currently in the middle school. And I believe this provides me a unique viewpoint from varied perspectives. I'm actually following up on a letter I sent to the board a few weeks back, and I promise to respect the guidelines of speaking to the board this evening. My husband and I made a decision to move into this district from a much larger district because we wanted a learning environment that was more differentiated, and as a result has had the benefit of meeting the needs of students from not only academic but also social emotional development. My experience in the middle school has shown me how important this foundation is for high school and beyond, and post-pandemic, these needs have become increasingly urgent. It is critical to recognize times have changed, and it is even more critical to meet the needs of students. It takes years to develop these trusted relationships with students, parents, and coworkers that have a common goal of doing what is best for each of these students. When you have people who have worked their entire career giving 150%, this becomes an invaluable advantage to students and a district. When someone knows each student by name, their families, and their needs, and works tirelessly to help them overcome their challenges, this is an advantage to this district. And when you have someone who possesses a compassion, knowledge, and strength to advocate for these students each and every day, this is invaluable. This should mean more to you as board members who have taken an oath to do what is best for this district and these students than a line in the budget or an arbitrary guideline. I urge you to do your due diligence. Go into the schools, speak to the students, speak to the families, and learn how this will directly impact any student, parent, or other administrators. And more importantly, be mutually and respectfully transparent about your intentions. Lastly, be sure to put the needs of the students first. I heard earlier, we wanted to make sure that we had the right people at the table, meeting the needs of the students. We have that individual at the middle school. And if you are truly doing what is right for these students, he will not be let go. Thank you.
I do have one email that Nora gave me that was sent in. This would be a fourth one if the board wants to waive it, so the fourth one could be heard. I could read it.
Straw poll, everybody ready? Yep. Yes.
Let's see, comment read to the board. In the newsletter, it read, when the budget vote is passed, there are no positions will be impacted this year since right sizing was done last year. Actually, it didn't say that to comment on it. It said there'd be no staff. The staff numbers would be the same. Doesn't change the flavor of this. Will there be any positions that will be impacted? Does the new budget include any positions eliminated across the district? Recently, we heard of a potential elimination position contract for the 24-25 school year. Here are a few questions to consider when discussing this elimination. Where will the middle school students turn when they are being bullied by classmates, when a student needs a few extra minutes to process their first school discipline? Who will recognize them for an act of kindness to other classmate? These are some of the direct ways that an individual has responded to my children who are seventh graders in the district. I am not the only parent that is standing up to voice our concerns about losing them as an invaluable resource in our community and school. They are a valuable member to our school community who supports students, faculty, and other administrators. Will our children be forced to take a number to have their concerns answered? Who will be filling this void for our students going forward? Thank you. Tracy Razowitz.
Thank you. All right. And that, okay. Did you?
No, I'm ready to go.
Okay. Then the next item is to ask if there is a need to go into executive session. Does anybody feel that need? Okay, hearing none. That is then our motion to adjourn. I'd like to remind the public that our budget vote and election is on May 21st. It's a week from today, from 7:30 a.m. to 9 p.m. in the II gym. And our next board meeting will be held on June 5th, which is a Wednesday. So, motion to adjourn? What?
Go ahead.
Is there a motion to adjourn?
Moved. Second.
Discussion?
Yeah, for Chuck, he always wants a discussion during adjournment. So as part of the discussion and in the consensus agenda, there was, whoever's laughing is right, thank you. There was a motion for moving forward with the mascot, accepting the branding guide. So to the board, what we have for each of you tonight, Carrie, thank you very much for getting this set up with BSN. They have provided, and I have different sizes, so before a board member leaves, these are the first shirts produced with the new logo and mascot. So congratulations to the board, congratulations to the community for how they have put this forward. So once you vote on adjournment, if you come up here, I have 3 sizes to pick from. Small, extra small, and extremely tiny.
That was extremely tiny.
So step up here and we will get those for you. Carrie, thank you.
We need to vote on the motion, please.
Thank you so much for this. And Jim, thank you for being the board member on the committee moving this forward.
My pleasure.
All right, with no further discussion, all in favor? Opposed? Is that in favor? And we're okay. Well, good, because we're adjourned. Thank you.